Hi, I'm Cindy Walker, Nutrition Program Associate for Morgan, Montauk, and Cooper counties.
And I'm Lydia Walker from the Eldon Nobles 4-H Club.
So sometimes we get a little bored of eating the same thing for breakfast every day, and we want something a little sweet. But we don't necessarily want to have unhealthy treats every day with a lot of added sugar. And so today we're going to prepare a recipe that we really like. It's from the Food Hero website, and our colleagues in Oregon put that together, and it is apple spiced baked oatmeal. For this recipe, we're going to need 1 egg slightly beaten, a ½ cup of applesauce, 1½ cups of non-fat milk, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, 2 tablespoons of oil, 1 apple chopped, approximately 1½ cups. If you have smaller apples, you might need 2 cups of old-fashioned rolled oats, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, and then 2 tablespoons of brown sugar and 2 tablespoons of chopped nuts for the topping. So let's get started today. First, Lydia is going to go ahead and crack the egg for us.
So when you're cracking an egg, you tap it on a flat surface, and then you gently push your thumbs into the bullseye and gently peel the 2 sides apart. And then you check for shell, and then you throw the shell away.
Okay, so Lydia's going to throw that shell away, and she's also going to wash her hands, because anytime you handle raw eggs, you want to wash your hands afterwards. Now, she talked about the bullseye. That's just the word that we use for the dent in the egg. And so you just want to tap that egg gently on the counter. It's nice to do that on a flat surface, because if you tap it on the edge of the counter or the edge of the bowl, what might happen is that the egg could split open when you do that, and you could get egg all down your counters, onto the floor, or everywhere, and not in your bowl. So we like to tap it on the flat surface. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're putting all of our wet ingredients in a bowl. So Lydia, go ahead and put that egg right in our wet ingredient bowl, and you can go ahead and use this spatula to gently beat the egg. And then our next ingredient is going to be a ½ cup of applesauce. Now, we like to use unsweetened applesauce. And so this is just basically pureed apples. And so Lydia's going to measure that for us using a dry measuring cup. And so she's just going to spoon that in and then level it off with the spatula. So Lydia, why don't you tell us how many years you have been in 4-H?
Okay, I have been in 4-H for 4 years, and I was a Clover kid for 1 year.
Okay, so that's 5 total years that Lydia has been in 4-H, and she's been in the Foods Project every year. Also, I learned how to cook when I was in 4-H. I was a 4-H'er for a long time, so that's where I learned to cook and to do food demonstrations, which now I get to do as a career. So I think that is pretty cool. All right, so Lydia did a great job of getting that applesauce all measured for us. And to that, she's going to add 1½ cups of non-fat milk. And remember that when you're using a liquid measuring cup, you want to get down at eye level to make sure that you get the exact right amount of the liquid so it isn't too liquidy. And to that, we've pre-measured 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. So she's going to go ahead and put that in for us. And then she's going to give that a stir. And while she's doing that, I'm going to start preparing our apple. Now, if you don't have knife skills or peeling skills yet, it's going to be very important that maybe you have an adult help you do that. And always, you should not cook without adult permission or appropriate adult supervision. So if you're not an independent cook, that's okay, but make sure you get your parents' permission. Also, it's pretty bad if you start cooking something and your parents aren't aware that you're cooking that, and they were planning on using those ingredients for something else, especially right now where we're trying to limit our trips to the grocery store. That wouldn't be great. So the first thing I'm going to do is peel this apple. Today I'm using a Gala apple. Granny Smith apples work really nicely in this recipe also. Just any type of apple that you want to bake with, and whatever flavor you like or whatever is available at the store is great. So I'm just going to peel this apple here really quick. I'm just using a peeler. You could leave the peels on. That actually makes more fiber in the dish. You could also use one of those handy little apple peeler core slicers or spiralizers if you have one. But for just one apple, I like to just go ahead and use my good old hand tools. Remember that you're always wanting to be peeling away from your fingers and keep your fingers way back out of the way. And then I have this handy tool that gets the core out of the apple, so I'm going to use that. But you could also just use a knife, but I like that tool because it saves us a little bit of time. Lydia, would you set those over there, please? Note that I handed her the knife with the blade, or the peeler rather, with the sharp pointy part away from her. Now I'm going to use this knife. It is a large knife, so I'm going to make sure that my fingers are well out of the way, and I'm going to just cut the apple right down the middle. I still have a little bit of core left in there, so I'll take care of that in a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to keep my fingers together and nice and tall and out of the way. And so now that I've got this in half, keeping my fingers out of the way, I'm just going to slice clear through the apple and make nice, thin little slices. It's a little loud there. And then I'm going to be able to turn my apple sideways here. So I've made slices, and now I'm just going to make my little dices. I'm going to keep my hands over here actually because that's not really stable. So you always want to take your time when you're using a knife. You want to only move the knife when you are looking at what you are doing. So I'm going to go ahead and put that apple right into the bowl as I get that out. So now I'm going to take the next piece. If you like smaller pieces of apples, you could go ahead and cut that across your slices as well, because these will be a little bit bigger than a dice. But it's kind of nice to have some of that nice apple texture in there. All right, so I'm going to cut up the other half of the apple here real quick. All right, now this recipe was one of the recipes listed on the Food Hero website. They have a couple different ways that you can search, and this one was under kid approved. And so a really large percentage of kids that tried this when they tested this recipe liked it. And so that's why I selected this recipe. It also has a lot of really great, it also has a lot of ingredients that people tend to have on hand. So that felt like a good choice as well. And Lydia, would you agree that this is a recipe that you like?
Yes, I love this recipe so much. Like, it's really tempting to just eat it all.
It's really tempting to just eat it all?
All of it.
I understand how that works. Now, we have someone in our family who needs to be gluten-free for medical purposes. And so this is a recipe that we are making gluten-free. Now, not all oatmeal is gluten-free, but we are using certified gluten-free oats, and we've checked all of our other ingredients to make sure that they haven't been processed with wheat. So today we are making a gluten-free version. And so if that is something that you need, it would be possible for you to do as well. Of course, you'd want to check with your health professionals for whether or not it will work for your dietary needs. I'm going to throw these away real quick. All right, so Lydia's has given that a stir, and now we're going to switch to the dry ingredients. So in our dry ingredient bowl, Lydia's gonna go ahead and put in our 2 cups of old-fashioned rolled oats. Again, we're using the certified gluten-free ones. And then to that, she's gonna add 1 teaspoon of baking powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. And again, we pre-measured all of our ingredients, well, almost all of our ingredients, to save some time today. And then she's gonna go ahead and give that a stir. When she gets back over here, Lydia is very helpful in the kitchen, and that is one thing that I really appreciate about her, is just how much she loves to cook. And so there are a number of recipes that she can make independently, and that is something that she has worked hard over the course of probably the last 5 years to get to that point. All right, so she's mixed that up. Now we're gonna add the dry ingredients to the wet ingredients. And then we're gonna go ahead and give that a good stir, making sure that we get to, it's okay. We're gonna make sure we get to the edges and the bottom and get that really well mixed up. A really great thing about using these oats is that oatmeal is a whole grain, and for those of you who might know about nutrition, half of your grains that you consume in a day should be whole grains. And so this is a great way to start your day off and be well on your way to having whole grains and meeting that daily requirement of what dietitians recommend. All right, Lydia, I think you got that pretty well combined there. I think since we're using this heavy glass bowl so everybody can see what we're doing, I think I will do the next part. We have, this is a 9x9 pan that we have sprayed with some cooking spray. And I'm just gonna pour in our oatmeal and apple mixture here and scrape the bowl. So we make sure we get all of that goodness in there. All right, now what I forgot to mention, or I think I forgot to mention at the beginning, was that we should have started by preheating our oven to 375 degrees. And so now what we would do is to go ahead and place that in our 375 degree oven that was preheated and bake that for 15 minutes. Then at the end of that 15 minutes, we're going to put a topping on top of the oatmeal. And so to make the topping, we'll need 2 tablespoons of chopped nuts. So we have almonds today, and so I'm just gonna give those a little chop again. If knife skills are something new to you, definitely be sure you have parental permission and supervision, and you kind of learn how to do that properly. You can also chop these nuts by pulsing them in a blender. You can use a coffee grinder or a food processor, but it's just 2 tablespoons of chopped nuts. And so doing it the good old-fashioned way on my cutting board here is really what we're going to do today, but feel free to do that however you like to chop nuts in your kitchen. You can also buy nuts that are already chopped. That would definitely save you a step if you have those on hand. Or you can skip the nuts entirely, but they add a nice crunch and texture, and then they also add some protein, and so it's a nice way, a nice element to add to the dish. So I'm just going to go ahead and get those nuts transferred over into this little bowl. In the bowl, we have 2 tablespoons of brown sugar that we had pre-measured. And let's go ahead and get the dry spatula here. You can also add a little bit more cinnamon to the topping if that is something that you really want to punch up that cinnamon flavor a little bit more. My brown sugar definitely has a few clumps because you always pack brown sugar into the measuring spoons when you're measuring it. So I'm just going to break those up, give that a nice stir, and then we're going to sprinkle the topping on here. Now, this would be what we would do after our 25 minutes. So I'm just going ahead and sprinkling it on, even though we haven't baked it yet. So it's baked for 25 minutes, we're pretending, and then we're sprinkling on our topping. And then here is the tricky part. So then you put it back under the broiler in your oven. So you turn off the baking portion and you go ahead and turn your broiler on. We really recommend using the low setting and watching it extremely carefully, because there is a very fine line between beautiful little bit of crystallization of the sugar and blackened oatmeal. So we've done this recipe a couple times testing it, and we had some interruptions, and it took us a while to perfect that, but we definitely decided that it was better to switch over that broiler to low. We were using it on high when we had that the incidents, we'll just call them. And so that's the nice thing about cooking, is that it is a learning process. And no matter how long you've been cooking, I've been cooking for most of my life. I don't necessarily need to tell you how many years that is, but it's a lot. And so even someone who has cooked for a lot of years and does this as a living sometimes has some little accidents. And so we were able to still eat it, though. We just kind of scraped off the kind of burnt parts, and we still found it to be delicious. So that is how you finish making that. And then we have a little swap out here. And so this, I don't have two 9x9 pans, so I just made it I made our swap out in a different pan. But as you can see, we got some nice caramelization of that brown sugar and those nuts on top. And this is a really delicious oatmeal. And so now this is the part that's going to be Lydia's favorite, because I'm going to just cut Lydia a little piece here, and I'm going to show you that she's not just making up the part where she likes it. And she's excited to get to taste a bite of the oatmeal. All right, so Lydia, thumbs up, thumbs down, double thumbs up. Thank you so much for joining us on the Cooking Connection. We hope this has inspired you to try a new recipe, to maybe make your breakfast routine a little bit different. And we hope that you enjoy this recipe and cooking with your family. Thanks for joining us.